No, first of all, I fully support, of course, Bogdan's idea involving NATO. NATO is a case of death now. I mean, Afghanistan, Libya. I mean, whenever Iraq, whenever NATO engages itself, the country collapses. But of course, I mean, I'm much more sympathetic towards Ukrainian than you are. So I think that NATO would stay away. Because otherwise, I mean, the Ukrainian position, which is bad enough, I mean, would deteriorate even further. But I will address the question of the new Cold War. First of all, what I have to say from the beginning is that unfortunately the Cold War was never stopped in Europe. It was proclaimed to be to stop at after the collapse of the Iron Curtain, but in a way the West has continued it by different means. It continued it by expanding its sphere of interest and control of NATO, later of European Union, especially of NATO, of course, against all pleas, all arguments and all interests of Russia. In a way, it was a continuation of it was a second run of the Versailles policy, which at one point, as we all remember, I mean 100 years ago or less, was directed against Germany, which was defeated, and because of the vicious pettiness of our European friends, it was run into the corner and became the source of the Second World War in a generation. The same policy has been conducted against my country, though in velvet gloves. And I must say, in order to avoid Weimar syndrome, I mean, we have been fighting, we have been trying to persuade our friends in Europe and in the United States with the voice of reason, to no avail. Then we, to heal this syndrome, we went to arms a couple of times. I mean, in Chechnya, against all advice, we have won. And then we went to arms again when Georgia attacked and killed our peacekeepers. It helped to heal the syndrome, but the policy was not stopped. And we had another, in a way, the problem was that the Cold War was not over, was not stopped, and an open wound was left in the heart of Europe, and that is this unfinished Cold War, and it invited infection. So this time it was the Ukrainian infection. The state was semi-failed. It has no state-building elite. I mean, it was surviving, its elite surviving by fluctuating between West and Russia, blackmailing each of us, I mean, to give subsidies. This time, I mean, we gave more subsidies, so they went the other direction, but the people, in a way, revolted. But until we finish, or in the end, this Cold War in Europe, the open wound will invite other infections. Of course, this bitterness of the second, when we saw again, this time it was senseless association agreement, we saw that it would bring only collapse to Polish economy, and we told our Western friends that they are pushing towards adventurous policy. I remember our common meeting with Bogdan, with a few prominent Polish and European politicians, when I was saying not so many words. I mean, if you do that, Russia would put an economic block on its borders, Poland will collapse, and you are making Poland into a cannon fodder of the new confrontation. You are sacrificing Poland, Ukraine. You are sacrificing the Ukrainian people in a way. All my interlocutors, and there were a few, they were looking at the tips of their shoes at that point. Nobody answered. I remember, though, one Ukrainians, after awkward 3 minutes silence, said, "Hands off Ukraine." I said, "That's exactly my idea, hands off Ukraine." However, where could we go from now? We have drawn, I mean, a deep red line by taking over Crimea. Of course, one could say that it is against the law. We could say that it's for the law, within the limits of law. It's how you deal with that. Anyway, I mean, living in Israel, or talking in Israel, which took over several lands, and having the history of Turkey taking over Cyprus, or even worse, NATO attacking Yugoslavia, Libya, Iraq, etc., etc. I mean, it's worthless to talk in terms of law. We have to talk in terms of interest and facts and geopolitical facts of life. I understand, of course, the bitterness of the reaction of our Western colleagues because of my sympathy towards the feeling of failures and losses which West has indicted on itself during the last decade due to its unbelievable failures, and especially after the fantastic, what it seemed, victory in the Cold War. The problem is, again, is that the Western problem, and the only way we made a mistake, or maybe may contributed to this problem, was that Russians did not believe themselves to be losers in that Cold War. We have many unpleasant traits in our national character. And one of these unpleasant traits in the national characters of Russia is that we are used to be winners. We sometimes lose small wars, but we always win in big confrontations. So we never take a defeat for victory. So when we were dealt with as losers, we were unhappy, and of course we fought back. Where from here? Of course we could continue, I mean, along the road which Bogdan has is more or less delineated. I mean, what will be the result? Probably Europe will become a continent, will cease to be a continent of peace. So there will be more divides. In addition to that, there will be growth of disintegrative tendencies in the European Union, which are obvious already now, and but Edward will talk about them and how Russia could play on them if we wish. We are not willing. We are not willing. I mean, it's Edward. It's your advice to us. No, we are not willing. There will be radicalization of European politics because of Europe losing competitiveness vis-à-vis, I mean, the new, and there will be, of course, Russia, which will be drifting further away from Europe and further away from its core European civilization, which will be sad for our country, but I think we'll survive because we have an opening, and that is to the east. Europe has no opening anymore. So what is the alternative for Europe? Rather than decline of all fronts with that kind of recipe, I do not know. What is my alternative? I mean, return to reason. We, Russia, have several times proposed to sign a pan-European security treaty in different forms. After this bout of confrontation, let us think about something about that. Providing, by the way, in the meantime, I mean, a permanent neutral status for countries like Ukraine, Moldova, and the rest, which are now in the gray zone, which will be, of course, a division of the sphere into the spheres of interest and influence. But, however, I mean, that is a fact of life. I mean, if some Europeans are rejecting that fact of life, that means that they are in tiny and shrinking minority in the world. Now 5%, soon to be 2 or 3 if they continue along that road. But I think that Europe whole and free is a worthy dream of dreaming and working after we survive this bout of Cold War. Do I believe that my idea is realistic? Not much. I I am a believer in reason, of course, because I am a European. But we Russians and we Europeans have proven ourselves that we very often are acting unreasonably. However, let us hope for the best. So my country has engaged in the policy of the Cold War unwillingly. It is willing to finish it. If our European and American friends are willing to continue, let it be their choice. Then we'll have, of course, also to have a policy of soft containment all over the world. And this time, of course, it will be not Russia and the West, or Soviet Union and the West. It will be the rest and the West. And the West is shrinking. And I do not want the West to shrink, because after all, the West is the foundation of the international order. And if we undermine the West, we undermine the foundations of international order. And we have enough of disorder already. Thank you.